Are you living your life on the balance point between order and chaos? Find out why that's important on today's episode of the Freedom Club Podcast.
Welcome to the Freedom Club Podcast, where we discover the fight for freedom, fulfillment, passion, and purpose. Your host is Kurt Mercadante, Gallup certified strengths coach, and agency founder who is dedicated to coaching individuals seeking to level up their life and their businesses. The Freedom Club is about unlocking your talents, turning them into strengths, and crushing your objectives. You can learn more at kurtmercadante.com. Welcome to the Freedom Club.
And it is Friday morning, Freedom Friday, which means it's time for the Freedom Club Podcast. I'm your host, Kurt Mercadante. Thank you so much for being here. For today's episode, we tried a little something new. As some of my listeners know, I have a growing Facebook group called the Freedom Club Community. And in that group, we have discussions about a number of things, but one thing we do is have discussions about episodes of this podcast. And what I've begun doing is actually taping my interviews, live streaming them, and then I taped today's edition right in the Facebook group and allow Q&A. So if you listen to this podcast, if you like this podcast, if you want to join in on the discussion and get a lot of other, additional great content, I urge you, join the Freedom Club Community. Look it up on Facebook, jump in, join. You can join exclusive Q&A, other content that I produce. I'm in that community, in that Facebook page numerous times every day. You can communicate directly with me. I urge you to join it. Before we get into today's episode, also, I want to put in another plug for my 2019 Growth Mastermind. If you're a business owner who's been in business for a few years, but you have decent revenue, but maybe you're stuck in a rut. You don't have that sense of freedom that you had hoped for when you started your business, because let's face it, true entrepreneurial freedom doesn't just mean growing your revenue. It means growing it in alignment with your family and your business. And if you don't have that true freedom, the Growth Mastermind was created just for you to join with other business owners to share your wins, your losses, your experiences, hold each other accountable. So if that's you, please message me. I'd love to have you in. And so as I mentioned today, I taped today's episode live. I did it as a live stream, and I accepted questions in the Freedom Club Community Facebook group. I urge you to join that. And so as you will hear at the tail end, I actually answer some questions from some people in the Facebook group, in case you wondered where I was getting these questions from. If you want to be able to do that and interact with me as I tape these podcasts, please, again, go to Facebook right now. Type in the Freedom Club Community. Join. You'll see my ugly mug there. You'll know that's the correct community to join. So without further ado, I bring you today's Freedom Friday episode of the Freedom Club. And it's on the topic of the balance between order and chaos. So thank you for this live taping of the Freedom Club podcast. Today I'm going to talk about a topic, the balance between order and chaos. A lot of business owners, they leave their 9-to-5 job and they start their own company, and they think, it's going to be like Braveheart. They wave the flag, they run out onto the field, and they scream freedom. And for me, when I started it, I so rebelled against the order of the 9-to-5. You've heard me talk about it before, where, I had a client who used to be an employer who would have their HR manager go cubicle to cubicle and office to office at 8:30 in the morning, checking to make sure that administrative staff and vice presidents alike, some of them making $300,000 a year, check whether or not they're in their seats. And so I rebelled against that order. And I really thought, and I had looked forward to a life where I would wake up in the morning with just nothing on my schedule, and I would take the day as it comes. And I did that for a long time. And what I realized is there's a difference between freedom and chaos. And what I was suffering was chaos. And when you have so much chaos, I don't know if you've seen the movie Man of Steel, and it's the first and the latest Superman movies. And when the villain Zod, Superman, at a young age, learned to control all of his senses incoming. He would look at someone and he would see their skeleton. He would hear the voices of everyone in town. And his mom taught him to control his senses. And so by the time he was an adult, he could do that. General Zod, the first time when his helmet comes off, right, on his spacesuit or whatever it was, he got it all at once. And so it was incoming. And so many times when we plunge ourselves into what is actually chaos instead of freedom, we have that, all that noise, right, incoming at once. And it can be overwhelming. And it becomes a prison in and of itself. And so, what I've learned over, not just with myself, but also with my clients, is that true meaning in a life of freedom and fulfillment is lived on that balance. It's a tightrope between order and chaos. And in his best-selling book, 12 Rules for Life, Professor Jordan Peterson talks about this, the yin and the yang, right? That life of meaning really being at that balance point between order and chaos. Now, how each individual person, whether their life is going to be fulfilling or not, maybe they need a little more order, maybe they need a little more chaos. But it sounds like a conflicting view, right? Or a conflicting idea that actually to experience freedom, we need constraints. And I often use the story. So when my wife and I first got married, we had a pug, and pugs are very nervous dogs. And so we lived in a condo in the Washington, D.C. area, and we would both go to work and we would leave him out because we thought it was cruel to put him in a cage. What we learned was when we came back from work, not only was there crap everywhere on the floor and pee, and he would tear up stuff and eat up our shoes and our slippers, our neighbors would complain. He was barking all day. That's what pugs do. They get very nervous. And so we took him to the vet after a long period of time because he was just like exhausted all the time. And the vet said, no, it's not cruel to put your dog in the crate. You're not constraining him in. You're keeping the bad stuff out and allowing him to be free within his realm. And so we often have to do the same things in our lives. I was just talking to my wife, we're constantly auditing our lives to make sure that we have the maximum amount of freedom where the kids are still getting the benefits of what they want to do, education, sports, but we're really flowing as a family. And we took a over 5-week long vacation in August in Europe. We had that feeling in the vacation of flow. I'm going to talk a little bit about the book Flow by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. I pronounced it correctly, I think, who wrote this book Flow. It was just a wonderful book. And, we were talking why we felt like we were flowing when we were on vacation. And we just kind of didn't have that feeling as much here in our daily lives. And we thought it was because on vacation, we were just kind of footloose and fancy free with no agenda, but that actually wasn't the case. And so when you talk about a life of flow, in his book, Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the author, psychologist, he provides these guidelines to actually live in a state of flow. First, intense and focused concentration on the present moment, merging of action and awareness, a loss of reflective self-consciousness, a sense of personal control or agency over the situation or activity, a distortion of temporal experience, one's subjective experience of time is altered, and experience of the activity is intrinsically rewarding. But, several of those things are concentration on the present moment, a sense of personal control. When we add some constraints on our lives, we're able to have that sense of control. And when you talk about flow, you talk about unimpeded water. But when you just have water, if you just, throw it out on your lawn, right, when there's no riverbed to contain it, when there's no pipe to contain it, it just kind of dissipates. It doesn't really know where to go. But when you put a water in a pipe, you provide those constraints, it flows quicker, it flows from point A to B. Now, if you start clogging up that drain, clogging up that pipe with needless gunk or crap or whatever it is, then you restrict flow. It's the same in our lives. And Jordan Peterson in his book talks about that balance between order and chaos. And that, the order, just enough order allows us to feel safe and secure. But just enough chaos allows us not to get bored, to have just the right amount of adventure and activity in our lives, right? So you have that personal control or agency. You're able to be intense and focused concentration at the present moment without the chaos of everything around us flooding into our brains, right? And you're also really able to focus on things that are intrinsically rewarding. You're able to have just enough adventure in your life. So it really is that balance between order and chaos. And when you think about politics, right, unless you're an anarchist, right, all rational political thought, whether you're on the right or the left, centers on the fact that government is there to provide meaningful constraints so that businesses, the market, individuals can have freedom within those constraints. Now, all political debate centers around how much of those constraints and how many of those their constraints there should be, but everyone is in agreement that government is there to set the ground rules and then to allow and to protect our freedom within those constraints. It's the same within our lives. And often I find people are stuck with too much order and they grab it like a security blanket, and they are unable to even take 3 steps toward the chaos. Or there's people who have jumped into starting their own business and there's just so much chaos that we need to bring some more order into their day. And I talked back about the vacation and my wife and I having that discussion. And what we settled on was actually, it wasn't just like a whole bunch of chaos when we're on vacation. In fact, normally when we go on vacation, we fly by the seat of our pants. And often what happens is we miss experiences. We get stressed. Listen, we have 4 kids and we travel with them all the time. We love traveling with them. But when you fly by the seat of your pants, things can get a little stressful. And so this time I actually put together a large PDF, like a day by day, hour by hour plan of everything we were going to do. Right. And so I was going to instill so much order on this vacation that we couldn't go wrong. Well, about 3 or 4 days into it, we realized that just wasn't the case. I was stifling our fun. I was stifling our adventure. I wasn't allowing us to pivot when shit happens, when a kid gets sick, when a kid gets thrown up, when we get tired. It was record heat in London at the time. And, we just needed to stop after walking miles all day. And so what we did was we actually started to walk that fine line between order and chaos. We would map out options for the day. We would map out general hours of where we wanted to go. And that allowed us to have freedom within certain constraints of the day. And we did that for the rest of the vacation, and it was perfect. We have to do that in our own lives. We have to set some constraints by allowing for that flexibility. Often when I meet with clients or talk with clients who are having trouble with focus, who are having trouble with productivity, who are having trouble with getting things done, it's because they need to instill more order in their day. And I often have them like radically schedule their day so that if there's something called Parkinson's law, right? That the time allotted for a project will magically equal the time it takes to create a project. So if you give yourself a half hour to complete that project, it's going to take a half hour. If you allot yourself 2 hours, right, you just stretch it out. So, really putting common sense restrictions on your day, which will give you more freedom. If you can get your projects done in an hour or 2, that allows you to get up, get out of your office, and go do things that fulfill you. Go on a lunch date with your wife, spend time with your kids, go for a bike ride, go to the gym, whatever it is. But importantly, it's also allowing you the constraints to get your shit done. And so, yes, freedom does mean you need some constraints, but it's that fine line between order and chaos, right? Because if you're fundamentally lacking freedom, it could be that you have too much chaos or too much order. Yeah, when I really had to put constraints on my life and business when I, after several years of not having freedom, and everyone thought I had freedom, right? Because I set my own schedule, I work for myself, right? But when you go into each day and you're going to take each day as it comes, you let too much chaos into your life and you let the day control you rather than you controlling the day. And that's where you lose your sense of freedom. Obviously, if you have too much order, right, which I experienced as well, when I let my clients control my day, when it was call after call after call, meeting after meeting after meeting. Yeah, it was all scheduled and I knew it was coming up for the day, but I hated getting up in the morning. I hated Mondays. And that's why you have to have that fine line. Jordan Peterson, his book writes, order is not enough. You can't just be stable and secure and unchanging because there are still vital and important new things to be learned. But when you have that balance, when you've positioned yourself at that balance between order and chaos, you've positioned yourself where the terror of existence is under control and you're secure, but where you are also alert and engaged. And so you have that ability to still improve, to experience new things, but you do it in a way that feels safe to you. Yeah, Ian, and that's a good point. So Ian asks, what made the difference? Actionable goals we can take away. So that is actually one of the things. So with my clients, we work, and Csikszentmihalyi, in his book Flow, talks about the importance of having actionable goals. But it's not just about actionable goals. He actually talks about having a life theme, and a life theme that is based upon how we actually want to live our life, what we desire, not what we think society lays out for us, right? There's a lot of people who think their life theme is, I'm going to get a job and I make $100,000 and then I'm going to do that and retire, right? And a lot of those people spend a lot of money coming to me because after 20 or 30 years of being told they're supposed to do that and setting their life theme according to that, they realize that sucks. They actually don't want to do it. So you have to set a life theme. I call it a vision statement, right? And it combines your purpose for living with the impact you want to make on the world. Now, a lot of people can do that. They're good at setting those big vision statements for their life, right? A lot of people have never given it any thought. But that vision statement doesn't make a damn thing unless you reverse engineer it. So you got to set yearly outcomes and then keep reverse engineering it monthly, weekly, daily outcomes so that every single day, you know, what are just those one, two, or three things I have to accomplish today to win the day. It's never more than 1 to 3 things. Because if I ask you, what did you accomplish today? And you say, oh, I got my whole to-do list of 20 things done. I'm going to say bullshit. You got a list of 20 things done. Those are all inputs. How many of those actually moved you forward? I guarantee it's 1, 2, or 3 things. Because if it's more than that, you're wasting time and you're clogging the drain. You're not living a life of flow. I guarantee it. I'm on my 3rd profitable business. I've coached 100 people over the past year. And each and every time, it starts out with them judging their days on arbitrary inputs. Oh, 10, 15, 20 things. I never get anything done. And then you strip away all the bullshit. Bruce Lee has a quote that it's not about the daily increase. It's about the daily decrease. It's about hacking away at the unessential. It's about stripping away all the bullshit, doing things not because they've always been done that way, doing the things that allow you to live a life of meaning. It's 1 to 3 things every single day. And so with my clients, I have them set outcomes for each year, just 3 big outcomes. 1 for work, 1 for family, 1 for self. And then you can reverse engineer it so that every day you're hitting those outcomes. You win 7 days in a row, you win the week. You win 4 weeks in a row, month, you win the month. 52 weeks, you win the year. You keep winning year after year after year, and every year you're moving toward your vision. And Mihai Csikszentmihalyi talks about that. It's the importance of having those actionable goals so that when you hit them, you're getting immediate feedback. Are you going to sometimes have to change your goals? Yes. But I argue that you set your vision, and if you have the right vision, you don't change that vision, right? It's still your destination. You're going to pivot on the way to get there. Exactly, right? But those actionable goals can change, but you learn, you get immediate feedback from them. You try, right? Maybe you fail, but you learn, then you try again. Yeah. So Paolo, So Paolo writes, I find that taking time to relax during the day is very helpful and productive, but getting to the point of taking those 20 minutes to relax is very challenging. Do you have any word of advice? So it's a constant struggle. I have to audit every single day. And at the end of every week, actually at the end of every day, but then I review it at the end of every week. If I have a day where just something didn't feel right, I go by a feel. If the water of your life isn't flowing. And I look at the day and I'm like, well, what did I do? What didn't I do? If day after day I wake up and I really don't like the feeling of having a call at 7:30 in the morning, I email my client and I say, I don't want to do these calls anymore. And I change around the order of our day. Sometimes it's not only what you're doing each day, it's the order in which you're doing them. And are you doing it in an order that allows you to have maximum energy for when you need it? First of all, are you stripping away enough bullshit in your day and only scheduling things? Listen, I only do certain calls on Mondays. I don't do any calls after a certain time on Friday. I restrict my workouts to certain times because I know that's when I not only have maximum energy for those things, it's just when I feel like doing them. And you could ask me now how that's going to feel next week, and I could go through next week and realize it's just not feeling well. And so I adapt and I change based on that. So Paolo, to your point, I schedule in. I'm to the point where I need to schedule in time to relax. I schedule in time not only for my workout, I schedule in time for walks. My wife and I, and I set outcomes so if you're having a challenge getting 20 minutes of relaxing every day, set your outcome for every day to have 20 minutes and test it. if that 20 minutes of relaxation time, you're taking it at Mondays at 10 a.m. and it's just not flowing right, change it. Try it Monday at 3, trying to work into the flow of your day. But what I find with entrepreneurs, especially Paolo, I know you work from home, I work from home, is if my computer is there, if my desk is there, I will work. And so what I do is I schedule things, right? To put those brackets. I schedule things. So if I have a task that's starting at 9, I schedule a meeting outside of the office or a call or time at the beach or a doctor's appointment at 10. That way I absolutely have to finish my task by 10 and then get up and go. And so, Paolo, you might schedule a meeting outside of the home and you might schedule on the way back after that meeting. You may be going past James Island County Park. So schedule your 20-minute walk. Figure out how your day flows best and start applying that. But it's going to take some time. Try it for a week and realize you might have to rearrange the pieces of the puzzle. So, Ian, what were mental barriers you had to override in your mind to get where you are today? So a big mental barrier is, social conformity, social norms, right? I did it was a Q&A with an online mastermind a couple weeks ago. And, someone said, I tell people I set a goal of 12 hours a week and I get really pissed if I go over 12 hours a week working, and people say, oh, well, what are you doing? Sitting around? It must be nice. I don't prescribe you working 12 hours a week, but what I figured out is that there's so much bullshit that I sit at the computer and I feel like I'm working and I'm not getting anything done. I've started outsourcing my work. So I have people around me working because I want to coach. I want to produce content. That is my strength. That's my strength zone. But you hear people chirping, must be nice. I did a video in which I said, I was at the beach with my kids on a Wednesday. And some people were so mad. One guy even quoted the book of Psalms that says something about the men shall work 8 hours in the field. Listen, I've read the Bible cover to cover, and I know that was probably not a requirement that men should work 8 hours, because I know a lot of men who work 10 hours and the relationship sucks with their wife. The relationship sucks with their kids. And to me, my relationships are 100 times more important than anything I do at work. Sorry to all my clients, you're all wonderful, but you take a back seat to my wife and kids and myself, quite honestly. So I did this Q&A in this online mastermind, and a guy's like, well, gosh, are you just laying around the rest of the day, wasting away? I'm like, well, you should follow me on LinkedIn because I box, I run, I spend time with the kids. My wife and I were out to lunch today on a lunch date. I'm extremely busy doing things, but it's not all just tied up sitting at this desk all day, right? I do the things that fulfill me. And he said, well, that's tough for me because I was raised, my father told me that men should work 8 hours a day. And I said, okay, how long are you in the office per day? And he said 7 to 9 hours. I said, let me ask you this. Of those 7 to 9 hours you're in the office, how many actual outcomes focused, like hours of work, do you actually get done? He thought about it and he said 2 to 3 hours. And I said, so you're wasting the rest of your day. But you know what he said? And this is what a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners say, well, I don't know what I would do with the rest of my day. Well, that's not a work problem. That's a fulfillment problem. You need to figure out what you love to do. If you're not married and you don't have kids, how's your physical health? How's your relationship with your friends? How are the other things you're doing in your life? Have you traveled somewhere on the map that you've always wanted to go, not for work and not for like extended family? This is a very large world. Your life could be full of a lot of things other than your work. And if you're only getting 2 to 3 hours of work, actual work done a day, but you feel like you need to stay in the office for another 8 or 9 hours wasting doing like bullshit busy work, then you need to figure out what you can fill up your life with that is fulfilling to you. But there are a lot of naysayers out there. There's a lot of people. I mean, some of them just can't imagine doing things the other way. I mean, my wife and I, we homeschool our kids, and I get comments all the time. Must be nice. You're at the beach on the day. Why aren't your kids in school? Because I reject the notion that the input of 6 hours sitting at a desk in school equals actual education. It might equal schooling, but it's different than education. Now, that's what we want for our kids. You have to determine the shortest, straightest, simplest route to your outcome. And that means you're not wasting time. That means you're living a life like that Bruce Lee quote, right? where Bruce Lee said, it's not about the daily increase, it's about the daily decrease. Hack away at the unessential. So, Ian, I hope that answered your question. Welcome, Paul. How you doing, Paul? Again, a book that really helped change my life was 4 Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And you read criticisms of Tim and his book, and it's by people saying, well, I'm a bricklayer. 4 hours a week would be impossible. It's about a mindset. If you work 8 hours a day laying bricks and you come home and your relationship still is in shambles, then you got to focus on the next 4 hours of your day, right? You got to adopt that 4 hour mindset. If you work 8 hours a day because of busy work, I've told this story before. When I first started my company, my agency, I was very efficient, but I was so used to that 9 to 5 mentality. Actually, it was probably more like a 7:30 to 7 mentality by the time I got out the door and my commute. I was so used to that mentality. I was efficient. I would get my work done in 4 hours. But because people would say, must be nice to have the rest of the day off, I let that stuff into my brain and I filled up the rest of my day and into the night with busy work, with BS. And I just wasted time. And we often do that. I see people on LinkedIn and Facebook, and they're so proud. I'm hustling. I'm grinding. It's 4 a.m. and I'm up. I'll sleep when I'm dead. I guarantee 80% of your day is utter bullshit. And you're doing it just to brag that you're working? That's bullshit. There's someone I know, listen, there's someone I know, and this is very personal to me, who recently posted a picture of himself. And he was in the hospital while his dad was undergoing chemo. And he had a picture of the computer open. He was editing a video and he said, still grinding. And it hurt me because when my dad was fighting cancer in the hospital, I did the same goddamn thing, right? And I talked to a friend who saw this very same video. He sat in the hospital with his mom and gave up a year of his life to do the same thing. You know what? You're not honorable. You're not cool. No one admires you for flipping open and working and grinding while your dad's there, because someday your relatives are going to be gone. And you're going to wonder, why in the flying fuck did I sit there with my computer open when I could have been present with the people around me? And it took me years to understand that, and years to get it through my head. Because Ian, you talk about those mental barriers. It's what other people say. It's what other people say, right? And people lay out this life that you're supposed to live. Elon Musk said, you got to work 80 hours. That's bullshit. There's one guy on LinkedIn who shares all this stuff, and he shared his man cave, and he had 62 screens and all this. And then he brags that he's a VP, a global VP. If you're a global VP, why the fuck are you doing spreadsheets all day? You're a horrible manager. You need to find people. I have a one-person business. I had a 7-figure agency, and I had 5 people doing spreadsheets. I wasn't going to touch it. What that means is you're unproductive, and people don't understand that productivity doesn't just mean getting shit done. It doesn't mean just getting 17 screens so you can see everything that's going on. Productivity actually means getting more of the right outcomes done with less effort. It's why cavemen or whoever invented the lever, right? Because instead of taking 100 people to lift a boulder, one person could do it. So when you talk about mental barriers, it's what a lot of people post on Facebook and LinkedIn. It's that people call it grind porn. Rise and grind. No, I would rather you rise and flow. I would rather you make 6 figures working 2 hours a day and spend the rest of your life with things that actually fulfill you. Because study after study after study shows that it's not money, it's not status, it's not even your health, it's not your titles, it's not your awards that lead to a fulfilling and happy life, it's your relationships. And there are so many people who are flushing the relationships down the toilet, and they're in their 20s or 30s, and they claim, well, I'll make that up when I'm in my 40s or 50s. I got to support everyone. And when they get in their 40s, they realize they've wasted so much time because it's time you're not going to have back. And trust me, when people you love start passing away and leaving this earth, it smacks you in the face. And you really realize how much time you've wasted that you can never get back. So anyone have any other questions? I want to thank everyone for coming on. We had a number of people watching. If you do have questions, this is obviously going to be in the Facebook group. If you are listening to the Freedom Club, this edition of the Freedom Club podcast, and you are not a member of the Freedom Club Facebook community, what the hell are you thinking? Look on Facebook, go to my website, find me on LinkedIn, find my Facebook page. There are links to this community. Come in. You can join in, ask questions as I record these. I'm going to bring on guests on a weekly basis. We're going to record live here in the Facebook group. So please join the Freedom Club community. And by the way, if you're someone who really is stuck, if you're a business owner and you've had your business for several years, you've made decent revenue, but you're kind of stuck in a rut, you don't have that freedom that you really had hoped for and you desired when you started your business. Because let's face it, true entrepreneurial freedom isn't just building your business, isn't just building your revenue. It's building that in alignment with your family and yourself. It's building it so that you feel like you're flowing instead of grinding each and every day. And that's why I've created the Growth Mastermind for business owners to come together, to share their experiences, to share their wins, to share their losses, to hold each other accountable. I'm launching it. It launches in January. It's limited to 15 people. I would love for you to join. If you say, oh, I don't have the money to join, I'm going to tell you, you're not that serious. Because I'll tell you, when I first started, I was charging very little for my coaching services. And the first person I ever did a coaching call or a sales call with, he was making 20 grand a month. And he said, well, that's too expensive. I was charging $750 a month. And he said, I need to talk to you about your pricing. And he talked to me about my pricing. I rejected it. And since then, I've raised my prices, 400%. And I got more clients because I want people who are serious. And people who are serious know the difference between an investment and an expense. And so if you're interested in joining with 15 other business owners to come in, to build your business, to grow together, to hold one another accountable, to share your experiences, your wins, your losses, and grow together, then come to my website, send me a message. I'd love to have you in the mastermind. So thank you all for listening. If you have any additional questions, please post them here in the group. And with that, this has been the Freedom Club Podcast. I'm your host, Kurt Mercadante. Have a wonderful rest of the day.